So we'll start here in chapter 20. So after all these pieces got to everybody, that's kind of where we are. Then all the children of Israel went out, and the congregation was gathered together as one man, from Dan even to Beersheba, with the land of Gilead, unto the Lord of Mizpah. And the chief of all the people, even all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 footmen that drew sword. So 400,000 soldiers. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel were gone up to Mizpah. Now remember, the children of Benjamin, these are the ones who did it, right? Or at least they had some people in their tribe that did this. There was a few evil people that came out and did this. So they heard that the Israels come there with all their other family, basically. I mean, there's a whole lot of people. It's the tribes. Then said the children of Israel, tell us, how was this wickedness? And the Levite, here's the man that was the one who did it, or the one who threw this concubine out in the street. The husband of the woman that was slain answered and said, I came unto Gibeah that belongeth to Benjamin, I and my concubine to lodge. And the men of Gibeah rose against me and beset the house round about upon me by night, and thought to have slain me, and my concubine have they forced that she is dead. Now, so he's saying they wanted to kill me, right? Which he doesn't say anything about what he did here, right? You don't see anything about, and they wanted me, but we threw her out in the street. He didn't tell any of that stuff. You don't want to tell the bad stuff you've done. Now, what they did was wrong, yes, but he didn't want to share his wrong that he had done. And I took my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed lewdness and folly in Israel. Which is true, they had. But he's not all innocent either. Behold, you are all children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel. And all the people arose as one man, saying, we will not any of us go to his tent, neither will any of us turn into his house. But now this shall be a thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will go up by lot against it. Certain groups will go up at a time. Okay. Now, this is exactly they're doing exactly what God told them to do. You go back to Deuteronomy 13, 12 through 16. I'm just going to read this, but this is God talking. If you hear it said about one of the towns the Lord your God is giving you to live in, that the troublemakers have arisen among you and have led the people of their town astray, saying, let us go and worship other gods, then you must inquire, probe, and investigate it thoroughly. So you need to go in and investigate. And if it's true and it has been proved that it is the detestable thing has been done among you, you must certainly put to the sword all who live in that town. Wipe them out. You must destroy it completely, both its people and its livestock. You are to gather all the plunder of the town into the middle of the public square and completely burn the town and all its plunder as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God. That town is to remain a ruin forever, never to be rebuilt. That's out of Deuteronomy. Well, God said if something really bad like this happens, this is what you do. Well, that's what they're doing. So there's some good. So, verse 10 now, back to Judges. And we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000 to fetch victual for the people, that they may do when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, according to all the folly that they have wrought in Israel. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, knit together as one man. So they're all there standing as one, unity. This is good. And the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what wickedness is this that is done among you? Now therefore deliver us the men the children of Belial, which are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death, and put away evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not hearken to their voice, and to their brethren, the children of Israel. Not listening. Now, really think about it. Each tribe of Israel has kind of done this exact same thing. Right? They didn't get rid of all the evil amongst them. Remember, they're supposed to drive it all out, kill them all. They didn't kill all the enemy. Now here they are. We want this enemy so we can kill them, and Benjamin's hanging on to it. All right, they're going to protect this people. Now, I don't know how many it was. Was it 5? Was it 10? Was it 20? Was it 100? Either way, there was a certain number of them, and they're not going to give them up. They're going to stand and fight for this. Sometimes maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's us being stubborn in our own sin and wanting to kind of stand up and protect it instead of just getting rid of it. Don't know. Possible. But the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities unto Gibeah to go out into battle against the children of Israel. So they're going to fight. Fighting amongst each other. We got a little civil war here, basically, right? Benjamin is a tribe of Israel. It's one of the tribes. Remember, he's the youngest son. Remember him? That Joseph, right? Remember that? He was the youngest. Of course, these are his kids, and they just continue to grow, right? So just like Pappy, and we can go back further than that, but like Pappy, his family now has turned into how many men in the family, right? There's 3 of his own sons, and each of his own sons have at least a son, and then there's women too, right? So, the tribe of Pappy has grown quite a bit in just a few generations. But you just imagine over hundreds of years, Pappy's gone, but those tribes has turned into hundreds and thousands of people, right?
Like maybe a whole nation.
Yeah, a whole nation. That's what they are. Benjamin is their own little nation, and there are all these 12 little nations in the tribe of Israel, or in the whole thing of Israel. Okay? But that's Benjamin. It goes all the way back to Ben. Benjamin. Not Ben. They didn't call him Ben. They called him Benjamin. Well, they may have. His close ones did. All right. So among all his people, there were 700. I may not have read that. Verse 15, and the children of Benjamin were numbered at that time out of the cities 26,000 that drew swords. So 26,000 of Benjamin. Among all of this people, there were 700 chosen men, left-handed. Everyone could sling stones at a hair breadth and not miss. Now, when I read that, it sounds like they're just really good and they can not miss the targets. Somewhere I read commentary where they said that word actually translates to sin, and so they were not sinful. I don't know. I don't really see how that would fit in context with this, because these people, Benjamin, they're standing up for sinful whatever. I don't know. To me, it just seems like they're really good at their slingshots. Why the left-handed, I'm not too sure why that really matters. But that's what they were. They was left-handed. Southpaws. And the men of Israel.
Do you swing what do you call them? Do you do that with your left hand?
Well, I'd say if you're right-handed, you could do it the other way. I don't know. Maybe
I don't know either.
Maybe the strategy is, maybe it's a better technique if you're left-handed. I really honestly don't know. I didn't really see anything that kind of explained that or talks about that.
I guess it's not important.
But there's probably some type of meaning to it.
Yeah.
Somehow there is.
We know left-handed is more rare than right-handed.
So, yeah. I don't know. There's some meaning to it, but I don't know what it is right now, and I don't guess any of us do. But maybe someday we will. 16, among all this people. No, it doesn't say that. 17, and the men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were numbered 400,000 men that drew sword. So 400,000 for Israel, 26,000 for Benjamin. So Israel quite outnumbers them. Verse 18, and the children of Israel rose and went up to the house of God and asked counsel of God. Now, this is good, right? Anytime we go to God, take it to God, this is good. Will, you got a question?
Noah has a question.
Noah?
I was just going to say, because Benjamin had less people, just like in that one fight. I can't remember what it's called, but they only had like 300 people.
Yeah. Making it Gibeon.
Yeah, and so
Gideon.
God said, keep taking it down. He wants to, he wants them to believe that it's him and not their own soldiers. Which maybe that's part of what goes into this, what we're getting ready to read too, as we go on in here. But yeah, Benjamin's quite outnumbered. So, and the verse 18, and the children of Israel rose and went up to the house of God and asked counsel of God and said, which of us shall go up first to battle against the children of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. So you're not taking all 400,000, but remember they said by lot we'll go by groups. So God said, Judah, you're going to go first. And the children of Israel rose up in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel put themselves in array to fight against them at Gibeah. And the children of Benjamin came forth out of Gibeah and destroyed down to the ground of the Israelites that day 22,000 men. Didn't say how many came out of Judah to go fight, but that's a big, significant loss. So Benjamin whoops Judah's butt here, basically. And the people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and set their battle array in the place where they put themselves in array the first day. And the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, shall I go up again to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? And the Lord said, go up against them. And the children of Israel came near against the children of Benjamin the second day, and Benjamin went forth. And it doesn't say, which group of Israel came out this time, unless I just missed it by saying it. I don't think I said it, did I? And Benjamin went forth against them out of Gibeah the second day and destroyed down to the ground of the children of Israel again 18,000 men, all those that drew the sword. Another butt whooping. Then the children of Israel and all the people went up and came unto the house of God and wept and sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. Now notice, the first night they asked, did we go? Yes. The second night they wept because of their losses. Did we go back? Yes. The third night, now they're weeping and they're offering sacrifices and peace offerings. Well, burnt offerings and peace offerings. Each time, remember that story where I believe it was Elisha was sitting on the hill and those men came to him and they were like, hey, man of God, come here. And he's like, oh, I'll send lightning down on you. And he killed him. The next time they came, man of God, you come with us. I'll tell you what, shot lightning down on him. That third group of people came, boom, they were on their knees, right? Oh, dear man of God, please, if you find it willing, would you come with us? They humbled themselves, right? To come to God. They humbled themselves. They wasn't coming in an arrogant fashion. So each night they got a little bit more humble. I think that's just interesting as you kind of read it. That's, there has to be a part of that we're going to see some success finally. And the children of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. Now they set the temple up, the tabernacle. They don't have a temple yet, but they set that tabernacle that they've been wandering through the wilderness with. It's set up here now, and the ark of the covenant sitting there. Eventually we'll get to where the Philistines will come in, they'll take it. And remember that story where they're bringing it back and it starts to fall off, and one of them gets killed because he tries to touch it, but they had it on the cart. Y'all remember that story? But anyway, that's way down the road. We're coming to that eventually. But anyway, it's sitting there right now. And so they're in the presence of God, right? He's in the tabernacle. That's how he was, right? His presence was there until that veil was rent, right? And now our bodies become the tabernacle of God, and he's with us. Okay. So they ask of him again. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, now this is a Levitical priest, right? Son of Aaron, Aaronite, which means what? Hey, let's think. See if y'all remember. What type of priest were the Aaronites? He was a Levite, which means they were priests and would take care of the temple. But the Aaronites were a certain type of priest. Yeah,
The
well,
high priest.
the high priest, right? So this one's a high priest. Okay, so in Phineas, so he's the high priest then, I suppose. If he's son of Aaron, he has to be. Stood before it in those days, saying, shall I yet go again or go out to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? Or shall I cease? Shall we stop or go after them again? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into thine hand. Now, when you hear those words, you shouldn't, I don't think you should fear anything. If God's telling you he's going to deliver them, now you know. He didn't say it the other days. And Phineas, the son, and I just read that, 29, and Israel set liars in wait around about Gibeah. I think people just lying in wait, not people going out there lying and telling dishonest truth or something. And the children of Israel went up against the children of Benjamin on the third day and put themselves in array against Gibeah, as at other times. And the children of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city, and they began to smite of the people and kill, as at other times. And the highways of which one goeth up to the house of God, and the other to Gibeah in the field, about 30 men of Israel. 32. And the children of Benjamin said, they are smitten down before us, as at the first. But the children of Israel said, let us flee and draw them from the city unto the highways. So here we are. They're going to pretend they're getting beat. They're going to run away from them. Benjamin's going to chase them, and they got people out there hiding and going to ambush them and jump on them. Y'all remember when Joshua and his army did this? And back when they were coming in to take over, I think it was A or I. It's spelled AI. I think we may even said AI. I'm not sure how you said it. Remember, we did that. I think it was Joshua. I typed it down. It's Joshua 8, I think, chapter 8. So similar strategy. Maybe they had read about those in the Chronicles or something, or they remembered the story. But they're going to use the same story. Get them to come out of the city, then we'll jump on them. 33, and all the men of Israel rose up out of their place and put themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the liars in wait of Israel came forth out of their places, even out of the meadows of Gibeah. And there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all of Israel. And the battle was sore. It's a big battle. But they knew not that evil was near them. And the Lord smote Benjamin before Israel. And the children of Israel destroyed the Benjamites that day, 25,000 and 100 men. All these drew the sword. So the children of Benjamin saw that they were smitten, they're beaten, for the men of Israel gave place to the Benjamites, because they trusted unto the liars in wait, which they had set beside Gibeah. And the liars in wait hasted and rushed upon Gibeah, and the liars in wait drew themselves along and smote all the city with the edge of the sword. Now there was an appointed sign between the men of Israel and the liars in wait, that they should make a great flame with smoke rise up out of the city. Now remember, they're supposed to go in and burn it, right? That's what God told them to do in Deuteronomy. And when the men of Israel retired in the battle, Benjamin began to smite and kill of the men of Israel about 30 persons, for they said, surely they are smitten down before us, as in the first battle. But when the flame began to arise up out of the city with a pillar of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the flame of the city ascended up to heaven. This sounds just like that story there with Joshua. Exact same thing. But when the flame arose, and verse 41 rather, and when the men of Israel turned again, the men of Benjamin were amazed, for they saw that evil was come upon them. They saw that, yikes, were defeated, were beat. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel unto the way of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them, and them which came out of their cities they destroyed in the midst of them. Thus they enclosed the Benjamites round about, and chased them, and trode them down with ease over against Gibeah toward the sunrising. And there fell of Benjamin 18,000 men. All these were men of valor, all their men of war. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness unto the rock of Rimmon, and they gleaned of them in the highways 5,000 men, and pursued hard after them unto Gibeon. and slew 2,000 men of them, so that all which fell that day of Benjamin were 20 and 5,000 men that drew sword, again, all men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled into the wilderness unto the rock Rimmon, and abode in the rock for 4 months. So only 600 came out of that of the tribe of Benjamin. That's all that's left. And they're all men. All of them are men. And the men of Israel turned again upon the children of Benjamin and smote them with the edge of the sword, as well as the men of every city, as the beast and all that came to hand. So they set on fire all the cities that they came to. So they wiped them all out except for those 600 men that got away, which we'll talk about in the next chapter, these 600 men. So, you go back to them, that they each night they came a little bit more humble to God, right? But it's interesting that God led them right into, he's like, yeah, go. They said, should we go? And they asked the first night. They went to God, which is good. Should we go? And he's like, yeah, go. But then they got whooped. And a lot of them got killed. And then the next night, should we go again? Yep. So why did God basically send them in there? Was it because they wasn't humble enough until that third night? Or was it, did he, remember, they're all, the whole Israel, they don't have a king, right? So they're all doing what's right in their own eyes. They're all kind of evil. So maybe God was just kind of doing the same thing, making them realize that they're not real good either. And maybe he wanted to wipe some of them out too. Because there was some reason God allowed all those to be killed. And he's the one himself said, yeah, go. But he never said, I'll deliver them, not until that third night. Now, was it because they humbled themselves, or was it because he wanted to wipe some of them out too? Was it a little bit of both? Or was there some other reason? I don't know. But I find that interesting. But
well, maybe they wouldn't have seen or realized had they not gone through all that.
Maybe that was part of the humbling process. They weren't going to be that humble until they've been wiped out a couple of times.
Right.
I think that's very possible too. Maybe the biggest reason, maybe it's a little bit of all of them, but maybe that was what it was going to take. Or maybe in the process of trying to humble them, he wiped out some that he wanted to get rid of anyway.
Sometimes the lessons that we learn they come hard. Sometimes you have to go through some hard stuff.
Yeah, and I've often kind of thought, even though I've never wanted it for myself, but I see people that go through a really hard time or something. And I've even told some people before that, they having trouble with their kids or something, very worried about it. And I was like, it really is kind of a blessing. I was like, because you're never any closer to God than you are than when you're going through a really hard time.
Right.
So the reality is a
lot of times we don't even realize his presence until we need him so bad.
When things are always just going good, that's when you wander.
And you think you're doing all that.
Even if you don't mean to, you end up starting to think that.
Right.
Even if you're like, yeah, I know it ain't me, but you still kind of almost start to think, yeah, I'm kind of doing all right, I guess. But really, you look at a family that's really in need, and a lot of times, as much as you would like to have that nice, happy life, that's when you're closest to him.
Yeah.
Because you have no choice but to trust in him in those times.
When you have nothing else. But it's sad that that's when you turn to God. It's when you have nothing else.
And sometimes
We're supposed to do that first.